Jose lived in a residential area on the outskirts of the city. It was a place where old, 2- or 3-story, slightly tilted houses were closely clustered together. Balconies hung from above, perpetually draped with clothes. Here and there, you could see flowers, tenderly cared for by the housewives. In some places, the plaster had long peeled off these houses, and the yawning holes awaited someone to finally patch them up. And through the narrow paved streets, one could barely pass except on a bicycle. "Juanita, you went to the market again without me. Damn it, I asked you to take me with you." "Oh, stop it. I can't remember everything for all of you." Such emotional dialogues could often be heard while passing along the houses. It often escalated into women's quarrels, drawing in the whole neighborhood. People would come out onto the balconies and couldn't even remember how it all started, each trying to outshout their neighbor. But as soon as you reached the end of the street, you found yourself in a small park or square, drowned in greenery. Here, elderly gentlemen usually sat on benches, attentively observing everything. And young mothers strolled with strollers or played with their little ones. Right here, you could find a secluded spot somewhere deep in the park to rest and immerse yourself in your thoughts. It was precisely here that Jose liked to be, a dark-haired, sturdy boy of about 10. Judging by his build, he had to do a lot of physical work. He usually came here alone and sat on a bench in the depths of the square. "Hey, Antonio, come to me quickly. I'll carry you," some caring mother would shout. And the happy son would run to her with all his might to snuggle against her warm cheek and feel her tender kiss. How difficult it was for Jose in those moments. But he came back to the park again and again, where happy parents walked with their children. He loved to watch them. In those moments, the boy imagined having a mom and dad. His parents passed away too early in his life. We were probably very happy, the boy thought. He had a very vague image of his mother's face, but in his memories remained her gentle hands, which loved to stroke his black, resin-like curls. Her name was Lucia. Jose tried to remember her facial features, but his childhood memory stubbornly refused to do so. He didn't remember his father at all. He only knew his name was Alberto. No, he wasn't an orphan. The boy was raised by his grandmother Sofia, who cherished her grandson dearly. After the death of her daughter, Lucia, Jose's mother, he became the only family she had left. "You're the only thing keeping me in this world," she often told her grandson. Jose found these words very unsettling. After all, she was his only family too. What if she wasn't there anymore? Jose tried to push these thoughts away. "Why is life so unfair, Grandma?" "What do you mean? Everyone else has parents. But I don't. It's all God's will. They must be needed more there. The Lord always takes the best. But what about me? I'm left without parents. But you have me. We have each other. 2 family members, 2 loving hearts. That's enough to be happy in this world." Sofia was a stout elderly woman in her 70s. Like all senoras of her age, she wore long skirts with bright shirts on top. She hid her gray hair under a scarf, but her lips were always painted with bright red lipstick. A woman remains a woman even at 70. They lived modestly in a small old corner apartment, but there was always food on the table. "Jose, would you like me to make your favorite tortilla? With tomatoes and cheese?" "Of course, just the way you like it." "Grandma, I adore you." The woman immediately went to the stove and started bustling to please her grandson with his favorite dish. They had a very warm relationship that they cherished. Yes, all grandmothers love their grandchildren. But no love can replace parents. Sofia understood that perfectly well. Sofia's tanned face often had a pensive expression. Jose noticed this and understood that something was troubling his grandmother. "Grandma, my dear, beloved, have I upset you?" "Of course not, dear. I was just thinking how nice it would be to buy you a new shirt. Your birthday is coming up soon. And you should look like a true senor." The boy smiled sweetly. One day, while strolling through the park, Jose noticed an old musician sitting on a bench. He was a tall, gray-haired man wearing a hat with wide brims. Despite his age, he had a slim figure and a straight posture not typical for someone of his age. It was evident that he was no ordinary person. "Hey, kid, do you like music?" the old man asked, holding an old guitar in his hands. "I don't know, maybe I do, maybe I don't," Jose replied indifferently. He truly didn't know. Music never played in their house. But the old man addressed the boy again with a question. "Would you like me to play for you?" "Why not?" Jose agreed to his offer. And the old man started playing. A lyrical melody poured from the strings, warming Jose's soul somehow. It felt like he had heard this melody before, in his distant childhood. As if someone had sung this song to him already. And these memories only made him warmer. In an instant, his indifference vanished, and he became interested in the stranger. "What melody is this?" he asked. "Oh, I heard it many years ago from a man named Alberto." It was his lover's favorite melody. He played it beautifully. It was impossible not to fall in love with the sounds of his guitar. The same thing was happening now with Jose. The melody captivated him. The man's name was Pedro. He was once a professional musician, playing in a cozy restaurant on an open terrace, setting the evening atmosphere. Sometimes he even participated in street festivals and celebrations, playing live music. He was very talented, handsome, and adored by the audience. All of this was long ago. And now he was spending his days in complete solitude. The boy and the old man started meeting in the park in the evenings. Pedro taught Jose to play the guitar, and music became their bond. Their evenings were filled with the sounds of guitar strings and cheerful laughter. "Music is magic that can melt even the coldest heart," Pedro liked to say. And the boy had a dream. For the first time in his life, he understood what he truly wanted, to become a musician. One day, as they sat in the park, the boy asked, "Why are you always here?" "I have nowhere to go. I don't have a family. There are no relatives left either. No one except my faithful friend, the guitar. Promise me that you won't abandon your dream and will strive for it with all your might. You have a whole life ahead of you. As for me, I only have one wish left, to pass on all my knowledge and musical experience to you." "I promise," Jose replied with sadness in his eyes. He didn't want to lose this connection. But he understood that Pedro was old, and soon he, like his parents once did, would leave this world, taking Jose with him. Grandma Sofia knew nothing about her grandson's new friend. And she certainly didn't suspect his passion for playing the guitar. Jose didn't tell her for the best reasons. He knew they didn't have money for a guitar, and it would greatly upset his grandmother. And he didn't want to upset her. Jose's birthday was approaching. He was about to turn 11 years old very soon. What can I give him to make him happy? Sofia was tormented by the same question every time. She wanted to give him something unusual, although they barely had enough for everyday things. But not this time. Grandma started saving money 6 months ago. She wanted to take her grandson to a restaurant he had never been to before. And she herself couldn't remember the last time she visited such places. "I'll dress him in the best shirt and trousers. The boy needs to get used to being around people in decent society," Sofia reflected in anticipation of the upcoming family celebration. "Jose, dear, what do you think about going to lunch at a restaurant?" she suggested on his birthday. The boy was amazed by this unexpected idea. He had never been to restaurants, but he understood perfectly well that they couldn't afford this entertainment. His heart raced with excitement at the thought of what they would do there. And did they have enough money for it? "How do you imagine it, Grandma?" he asked with curiosity. "Oh, dear, it will be wonderful," exclaimed the woman, taking his hand. "You'll see that you can have a pleasant time in such a place and enjoy delicious food." They left the house and headed to the local restaurant, which they had seen many times but never visited. As they approached the door, Jose felt excitement, not knowing what awaited him inside. As soon as they entered, the air was filled with the aroma of delicious food. Soft light and cozy atmosphere made Jose feel at home. They chose a table by the window and began to study the menu, discussing what they would like to try. I don't even know what to order. There's so much here. Grandma, some of these dishes I'm seeing for the first time. Don't worry, Jose, you'll get used to it. You have a whole life ahead of you to discover many things. Let's get the duck confit. And I'll have the rooster and wine dish. I've never tried anything like it before. When the waitress brought them their ordered dishes, the boy and his grandmother couldn't help but express their delight. They enjoyed the delicious food, chatting and laughing as if they were the only patrons in the restaurant. Your bill, the waitress laid the check with a multitude of numbers on the table, and the grandmother's uplifted mood instantly disappeared. She realized that they didn't have enough money saved up to pay for the tasty holiday dinner. Jose understood this from her expression. We'll stay a little longer, suddenly announced the boy to the waitress as he saw something that could help solve their problem. In a dark corner of the restaurant, there was an abandoned guitar on a chair. Apparently, musicians used to entertain the patrons with their music. Well, why not give it a try? I don't have any experience performing in front of an audience, but I think now is the time. Jose calmly got up from his chair and, without saying a word, headed for the guitar. Can I play a few pieces? He addressed the restaurant manager with a question. Can you? The man in the pristine white shirt looked at him questioningly but didn't object. Grandma Sofia didn't understand what was happening. Her grandson took the guitar in his hands and sat on a chair in front of the restaurant patrons. He began to play the same melody he heard in the park from the old musician. Both the restaurant staff and the patrons, everyone turned their attention to him. The boy played as if he was filtering every sound, every note through himself, his thoughts, and feelings. His music penetrated every heart. But especially attentive was the man sitting at a table all alone. Despite his absorbed playing, Jose also noticed him. His facial features even seemed somewhat familiar, even very close and familiar. Jose? Suddenly spoke the man when the last chords sounded. But there was doubt in his voice. Dad? The boy responded with the same bewilderment. Yes, it was his father Alberto, whom he had believed dead for many years. Both father and son were deeply moved. The audience shifted their attention from the music to the dialogue between the two relatives, watching them closely. They stood facing each other, trying to find familial features. And when they succeeded, smiles lit up their faces. But what had happened? Why didn't Jose know his father was alive, and why hadn't his father sought a meeting with him? The answer lay with Sofia, Jose's grandmother. She had intervened in his father's and mother's relationship. The father left, and shortly after his departure, the mother passed away. The grandmother blamed herself for what had happened, but it was already impossible to change anything. But let's go back a few years, when Jose's parents were still together. Alberto and Lucia were a beautiful couple. He was a handsome man with a tan complexion and dark hair slicked back, which added to his allure. His toned physique doubled his natural attractiveness. It's no wonder Sofia immediately disliked him. After all, attractive men like him tend to be frivolous and easily drawn to other women who constantly surround them. Lucia, he will cheat on you left and right. You'll be unhappy with him, she would insist to her daughter. Mom, we love each other. And that's what matters most, her daughter would object. It's worth mentioning that Lucia was not inferior in beauty and allure to her husband. With her beautiful dark eyes, long bronzed hair that glistened, and full, curly lashes, she could enchant anyone. She always accentuated her slim figure with vibrant dresses, and high heels were a constant accessory. Yes, Lucia knew how to dress beautifully and valued herself, which made her even more irresistible. And her voice, what a wonderful captivating voice she had. Whenever she sang a melody, everyone around would immediately start listening. In those moments, Alberto fell even more in love with his wife. You've given me the greatest happiness a person can have. Lucia, I will always be grateful to the Lord for giving me you, he would say. No, I should thank him for giving me you, she would reply. They could endlessly exchange words of love and admiration. It seemed like nothing could disturb their family happiness. But deep down, each of them feared losing the other. And Alberto feared it the most. After all, his Lucia was not only beautiful but also talented. How can I keep her? She's so talented. And I'm just an ordinary man. Such thoughts often crossed the mind of the loving husband. Despite his external beauty, he did not possess any outstanding abilities. And the musical gift bestowed upon his wife by nature tormented him. One thought plagued him: I am not worthy of her. Alberto, today I am singing at the festival. Do you remember? You promised to be there. Today? Have you forgotten? All our friends and relatives will come to see me. No, I won't be able to make it. In fact, Alberto had no urgent matters that day. I can't bear to see other men admiring my Lucia, he thought at that moment. Yes, it was jealousy. It consumed his insides, robbed him of peace, and clouded his mind. Instead of supporting his wife, he headed to the nearest bar. It was fairly empty inside. At one table, a couple of gentlemen were playing cards. The rest of the sparse crowd was drinking tequila, accompanied by smoking cigars. After looking around and not recognizing anyone, the man decided to seclude himself in the corner. A waiter approached him. "Give me a cup of strong coffee without sugar and a shot of whiskey." The waiter nodded obligingly and left. And Alberto immersed himself in his thoughts, not noticing a stranger joining him. "Can I offer you some tequila?" Alberto snapped out of his reverie for a moment, but didn't hear the question. "Can I offer you some tequila?" "Waiter, 2 tequilas for me and this gentleman." The stranger didn't wait for a response, so he decided to place the order himself. It was only now that Alberto noticed there was a completely unfamiliar person sitting in front of him. "Who are you?" "My name is Pedro. I can see you're dealing with some issues. Can I help in any way?" "Who are you?" Alberto repeated his question more insistently. "I sometimes play and sing in this restaurant. My wife also sings. Her name is Lucia. She has a magical voice. And she is divine beautiful. And only I make her life gray and miserable," Alberto said, becoming so unhappy that the stranger wanted to comfort him immediately. "Why did you decide like that? Is it really so important to have some talents? After all, not everyone is gifted. Any talent is given from above. And its owner must demonstrate his mastery to everyone around. Such is fate." "Yes, but what about me? At some point, there will be another talented musician who will be next to my Lucia. And what will happen to me? I can't lose her." Alberto exclaimed. "Yes, I see you're quite the jealous one." "No, my thoughts are quite real. Today she performs at a festival where there will be many other bright artists like her. I think I can help you. It will just take immense desire and persistence. I'm ready." "Sophia, where is your loving husband?" Sophia asked her daughter when she didn't find him at home in the evening. "He must have urgent matters since he didn't make it for dinner," her daughter replied calmly, without a shadow of doubt. She really wasn't worried because she trusted her beloved. "I know what kind of affairs these types can have. Probably pleasuring some brunette in a second-rate hotel room right now." Such thoughts never crossed Lucia's mind, so she just smiled in response. "How can such things come to your mind, Mom? You have a rich imagination. I just want my daughter to be happy. And your husband lies to you. You'll see, I'm right." Despite such loud accusations, Lucia didn't attach any importance to them and didn't get upset at all. In any case, it didn't show on her lovely face. Alberto returned home tired, closer to midnight. He took off his coat and sat down right by the entrance. Lucia didn't ask him any extra questions and greeted him as she always did. "How was my beloved husband's day? I see it wasn't easy?" Yes, sorry, I had to stay longer today. Dinner was on the table, but Alberto didn't even touch it. Lucia pushed a pack of cigarettes lying on the table towards him. Take one, she said. Thanks. He lit up. Lucia silently watched him, not asking any questions. When Alberto finished his cigarette, she immediately said, "Let's go to bed. It's very late already." Alberto gladly accepted her offer. But the late-night returns became a pattern. At first, Lucia didn't ask questions, but when they started to arise, Alberto couldn't provide any coherent answers. "Alberto, I think it's time we talked," Lucia greeted her husband after another late-night return. "I'm very tired, let's do it tomorrow." "No, I think we shouldn't postpone it any longer. I've heard similar excuses from you before, but so far, I haven't received a clear answer. I have a lot of work. I work too, but I come home on time to cook you a delicious dinner. But more and more often, I find myself cooking only for myself now. I have nothing else to say to you." Lucia didn't know what to do. So she decided to confide in her mother. "I told you he would cheat on you. But you didn't want to listen to me." Now Sophia had more reasons to accuse her son-in-law of infidelity. Moreover, her acquaintance reported seeing him leaving the hotel 2 blocks away. Here was a reason to finally get rid of him. No, she didn't tell her daughter about this. Sophia decided to start with Alberto. "How's my son-in-law doing? Since when have my affairs concerned you?" Antonio replied with surprise. "Since you started seeing other women. You've been seeing. And don't you dare lie to me. You've been misled." "I have no one else but Lucia," the man replied calmly, accustomed to Sophia's attacks. "How do you explain your late returns then?" "That's none of your business." "You're mistaken. Lucia is my daughter, and I won't allow her to be deceived. Don't interfere in our lives. We'll handle it ourselves." But this time Sophia decided to go all the way. She told Lucia everything about seeing her husband leaving the hotel late at night. But she had to lie to remove any shadow of doubt that Alberto was cheating on her. "I should have listened to you after all, Mom," Lucia said, sobbing on Sophia's shoulder. "Don't cry, he's not worth it. You're such a beauty. Everything will be fine for you in this life." After that, they packed Alberto's things and put them outside the door. When he returned and saw the suitcases by the front door, he understood everything. He couldn't do without Sophia. "Lucia, let me explain everything to you. You had the chance, but you didn't take it. There's nothing more to talk about now. Leave." Lucia said this through the closed door and couldn't see his face, full of despair. Alberto didn't know what to do. He had no one in this city. After some thought, he decided on a desperate step, to leave here forever. To leave this city once and for all. Maybe then he could forget his Lucia, and she would finally find someone as beautiful and talented as her. Yes, that's what he had to do. He had no other options. He was indeed at the hotel. Denying it was pointless. But he couldn't bring himself to confess to his wife that all this time he had been with a man who taught him to play the guitar. It seemed implausible in his situation. Although he took this step for her sake, to become more worthy of his wife. And he left. It wasn't easy for Lucia to endure this loss. Despite everything, she continued to love him. Her sadness was alleviated by music, to which she now devoted more time. But soon Lucia realized that she was expecting a child. This news delighted her very much. After all, a part of her beloved would forever remain with her. But unfortunately, Alberto left in an unknown direction, and she couldn't tell him about it. "Mom, I have wonderful news for you. Did you find a man?" "Well, no, of course not. Mom, I'm going to have a baby." "A child? From that scoundrel?" "Don't speak about him like that. And how should I talk about him when he's just a passerby, that's all. He swept you off your feet and then left. I want this child. And who will need you later with such baggage? You'll be alone raising him. How can you say such a thing? You're a mother too. Yes, and I know perfectly well what it means to raise a child. How much strength and health it takes. But Lucia had already made up her mind. Exactly 9 months later, she gave birth to a beautiful boy, whom she named Jose. He looked so much like Alberto, the same black eyes, the same black curls. Sophia hated him even more for that. All day long, she would drill into her daughter that she was now unwanted by anyone. Soon, Lucia fell ill. The only thing that brought her joy was her baby. She could spend hours playing with him, and it brought her immense pleasure. When the boy turned 2, she was gone. Sophia had to take on the upbringing of her grandson. Over time, her dislike for the baby began to fade into the past. With each passing day, she loved him more and more. Whether she began to feel guilty or she really needed time to get used to this little person. One evening, there was a knock on the door. Sophia wasn't expecting anyone, so she didn't rush to open the door. Finally, she decided to and was immediately stunned. Alberto stood before her. Still as handsome, but slightly thinner with duller eyes. I tried to forget her, but I couldn't. But now you'll have to. Lucia is no more. How? She passed away last year. But then Alberto heard some light footsteps behind Sophia. Lucia! He exclaimed. And then a little curly head appeared from behind the grandmother. Who's this little one? This is my grandson Jose. Where is he from? Did Lucia have a child? How old is he? He's 3 years old. Did she have a man? No, she had no one else but you. Then he's my son. No, he's my grandson. Suddenly Sophia vividly imagined Alberto taking her grandson away, leaving her completely alone. After all, he was the father, so he had all the rights to the child. But in that moment, a plan formed in her mind. You won't get him. I'll tarnish your name. I'll tell everyone that you're a scoundrel and cheated on your wife left and right. I'll put you behind bars, but I won't give you Jose. You can't do this to me. He's my child. Your child? Then where have you been all this time, Daddy? Why did your child grow up without a father? Alberto had nothing to say. He knew what this woman was capable of, and he knew it would be difficult to prove his paternity. And this time, he had to give up his own child. But let's return to the restaurant, where Alberto finally had the opportunity to reclaim his son. They stood together, embracing, both crying uncontrollably. The other diners seemed to share the same emotions. Some were crying, some couldn't hide their smiles of joy. And the waiter approached, extending his hand to the boy. Whether in gratitude for his guitar playing or because he recognized and forgave the father, nobody remembered the bill for the celebratory meal. It remained untouched on the table. Thank you, Grandma, for the best meal of my life. Grandma smiled and hugged him tightly. The veil of sadness finally lifted from her eyes, and Jose saw them sparkle. The father nodded in agreement and, holding hands with his son and supporting Grandma Sophia, they headed home, feeling happiness and warmth in their hearts. Dear viewers, if you enjoyed the story, please support the video by liking it and leaving a comment. Thank you very much.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick, is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.